discussed this issue several times, is open to the consortium, no? To decide in which field is better to work. Of course, you have to keep in mind that despite the budget is not that small, despite the fact it's a long time, you have to be practical. And of course, you cannot, I can mention something, but that could be considered an influence to, so I think that there are no real constraints, and we understand there is a big difference, and you can go from viruses to bacteria, and you can go to infection, but I think it will be part of the creativity, and then the panel will have to judge. Then there is a third party, which is the panel. Is it correct, Pierre, or you were?
Yeah, I was asked the question before about the vaccines. I mean, they asked me if only marketed vaccines are going to be considered, or if also other vaccines which are in advanced clinical trials, evaluation, testing.
Yeah, I think one of the dogma of IMI is not for developing new vaccines, so it makes more sense to it's plenty of work, yeah. And those that are in development, what you mean, in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, yeah. I think this is becoming more difficult also for companies that, in a way, don't forget that we are still competing, not on the market. It's already a big result to have us all together, and so we have competitors and so on, but probably if we are here and IMI exists, is that people are thinking that there is a big advantage in this opening discussion with the academic colleagues. Yeah, so I think it's plenty of vaccine that are yes. already available. And
I think that this makes sense also more for FDA and for the regulatory authorities, and also for the registries available already in in public institutions. No, probably it will be also easier to gather material to be studied. Any question came to your mind? Yet we have a question there.
Your presentation was mainly focused on vaccine for prevention, but by the end you spoke about therapeutic vaccine. Do you think this needs a special approach, or can be fused in?
You know, the main use is prevention, and the main problem is in babies. And as I say, let's consider that the pandemic last year, with the fact that H1N1, the population was not exposed before, made a revolution in terms of vaccinating pregnant women. If you still think to touch pregnant women, I think you need to have a real reason, not because the risk is very high, but it's been decided, and this was something. So I think the major use is that one, but I cannot see a situation where, I mean, therapeutic vaccines are still very experimental level and so on. But as I said before, this project is for 5 years. And after 2 years, it comes up that, recently has been approved a vaccine for, I think it was for prostate cancer or something. But the outcome is that the survival of the patient is increased statistically, but it's only 3 months. So I think it's very different. When you have a vaccine for preventative disease, you need at least to have a protection of 80% in absolute safety. When you go to the therapeutic, like what you have for drugs, you are prepared to open any price. No, I think survival. So the two things, I would say, for the time being, preventive vaccine.
There is another question there.
Thanks for your presentation. You mentioned about collaboration between FDA and the EMEA collaboration to the project, as far as I understand. Is that right?
Why?
FDA and EMEA. Close collaboration
with the project.
Would there be a collaboration with the FDA and EMEA?
Yeah, no, I mean, with the EMEA, there are discussions, no? Teresa can answer, there are already discussions. And they are linked anyhow, because of course if you are a manufacturer, the United States are an important thing. But the point is, this is really a new approach to put together private research and public research to get an important result, which is accepted. Because sometimes AMA, FDA people here, I don't know, I shouldn't say, but if you are in companies, you know, the discussion with regulatory authorities is not easy, and sometimes is long, and the impact could be also very heavy, because the usual investment for drugs and vaccine are, you know, I don't know the numbers, maybe it's 10 years, 100 millions, no, more than that. I think it will have the order 600, 800 million. So this, if you have a delay of 1 year, maybe because the regulatory authorities are asking an additional test, which maybe doesn't make that sense. I could say the companies are asked some time for, I didn't see Michele wants to say that. They ask for animal models, but in vaccine, animal models are not perfect. So I think the major interest is to open a discussion at the level of innovation, ideas, manufacturers, and also regulatory authorities. That's what companies are. Michelle, you want to say? Sorry. No, go ahead, please.
I just want to ask that, since you mentioned that you are going to prepare something for later approval by the regulators. So in that sense, I ask that questions. In addition to that, I would like to learn whether the WHO or the national authorities will be incorporated in this project.
Michelle is the...
What I can answer. First, regarding DMEA, as you know, vaccine safety is very high on the agenda of EMA, and they have their own views on how indeed improve the situation. We had, with Maria Teresa, a meeting with them. They will certainly follow the project in a way or another very closely, and there are different possibilities for regulatory agency either to be involved in the project themselves or to sit on external advisory boards. So this is open, and we will see how it proceeds. But it's clear that there is an important interest from the EMA, and then we will see later on, because as Aldo said, and as you said, you know, at the end of the day, we would like that what is produced here is indeed useful for, you know, the community, and which means for the regulatory authorities. Regarding the FDA, what I can tell you is that I met last week, and I will meet again next week with the FDA commissioner, Peggy Hamburg. So they are really following the IMI, and I anticipate they will follow this project very closely. And in other projects from the first call, we have already experience of contacts between the coordinators of IMI project, jointly with FDA and EMA, because you know that the FDA and EMA are working closely together. So we will see. It's too early to comment on this, but clearly there is interest from EMA, and we will have, when the full project proposal is there, we will see with them how to proceed.
Yeah, if I can add a comment, this is a big investment, because even though the companies are doing this in kind, but in kind to mean in the company you take a group of people, they are devoted to the project, and they have to work for the project with the others. So in this moment, as everybody knows, is very difficult, even for companies. There's a big crisis, this is not finished and so on. So even within companies, there are discussions whether or not to stay. Michel say yes, you know, this, to devote resources to this kind of approach. On the other side, the Commission is paying 50%, but this is public money. It's what we pay, all of us, with taxes. So, I mean, Michel and colleagues have a serious responsibility to use this money to deliver something, to get a result. And I think for many of us, a clear situation of the safety of vaccine, all the things will be the goal to be reached, and this will be very important, and at that point the money will be invested properly.
Wonderful. I liked your first point. Of course, you have to look for inflammation. I think there is almost no, to my knowledge, efficacious vaccine which does not induce inflammation. So the markers like IL-1 beta or whatever is not very specific. So have new biomarkers, that is really exciting, but probably a very difficult tool. But saying that, you didn't mention anything on preclinical model. I think if you try to immunize without, it's not efficacious. So I think we should also think on preclinical model where we try different dose and different types of vaccine, of adjuvants in a vaccine, model vaccines, whatever, and to see to what extent the inflammasome activation is required with all the wonderful goodies which may be necessary, but of course if it's too much, it's too much. So it's really, the patients are suffering and eventually precipitates disease. But I think this would be important. What is the point from yours? What is IMI? Does it think to look how much is good, how much is necessary? I think inflammation is necessary to induce active immune response.
No, you're perfectly right. I mean, the key word is adjuvant. It's the first time that maybe people don't know, all of in the audience, that the adjuvant has been used for decades, has been alum. In the last 2-3 years, and not everywhere in the world, other adjuvants has obtained approval. So you can scale up or scale down adjuvant. That makes sense in animal, but maybe it doesn't make sense is to study the specificity of immune response in a mouse when you have to vaccinate a human, but you have to see. One thing that I can say that since I'm on the podium, which is very important and is not reported in the community, the experience of the pandemic last year was thanks to the use of the adjuvant. Instead of giving 2 injections to the people, it came out that even in children, 1 injection was sufficient to produce neutralizing antibodies. This created a lot of problems because the government already ordered 2 doses, and that's another story. But so it's an example that maybe you damage the market, but it's a big result because, from many viewpoints to give 2 injections. And this was due to the adjuvant. So adjuvant, you're perfectly right. You can see how much you can give and so on. The best adjuvant is LPS, but of course, I was doing the military service and we against injection again, typhoid fever, and I can tell you that LPS, maybe you did the same, is really inducing some side effects.
Sorry, could you please speak in the microphone?
Some of these questions could have been predicted, and often the clinicians do not listen to the preclinical scientists. That is their problem. But I think it's a pity if you have animal models, you could have predicted repeated, we know it, repeated injections of adjuvant is a problem. And if you want to really see which adjuvant, of course, we are not developing adjuvant, but there are many new agents in the pipeline. In addition to alum. And alum, if you look as a pathologist, it's fantastic. You see necrosis. I love it. But it's accepted. It's necessary. I think this necrosis is necessary. But how much is sufficient? And this can be modeled in vivo. And mathematics.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit more technical, but you go from alum to all these squalane in water and so on. But now I think the research level is such that you can start to think rational adjuvants that are binding TLR, toll-like receptor, and things like these are stimulating one species. But of course, you have to do. In this case, I would say it's really more a toxicology study, because the adjuvant is like a drug. The antigen is different; is inducing immunity. But I think we are here today because adjuvant started to be used seriously in the population since a couple of years, and that's a problem to be studied. Not the